do teachers prepare students to meet the challenges of English language at Key Stage 3? King Edward VI School is a training school in Bury St Edmunds, Suffolk. In this programme, Barbara Blyman from the English and Media Centre in London visits the school to discuss with English teacher Gareth Mills techniques he might use to extend his teaching of complex sentences. First of all, they reviewed a lesson that Gareth had taught the previous week.
Very nice of you to join us, girls. We're going to look at something called second conditional sentences, which is a grammar-based thing. And by the end of the lesson, you're going to know how to use these sentences and you're going to practice using them. Okay? Now, second conditional clause is a sentence that uses two clauses, a main clause and what we call an if clause. If the if clause comes first, you need a comma between the if clause and the main clause. If the main clause comes first, you don't. Okay? You're either going to have in your hands an if clause or a main clause. They only make logical sense if you put them together with the right person.
I'm not exactly pushing back the boundaries of pedagogy by having a card sort, but I think it is active. It gets them on their feet, gets them talking to each other as well, which is quite important.
How would you like
Yeah, you had the main clause, you had the if clause, but she was first, you were second.
In your lesson, you introduced the idea of second conditional clauses. I was just interested to know had you done stuff on main clauses and subordinate clauses before?
We've done stuff on simple, compound and complex sentences and the difference between them. We'd not actually got something as complex as second conditional clause.
I'm going to read out the yellow one, the first one. If you've got the pink one, put your hand up, okay? How would your life be different?
if you spoke English perfectly?
Spot on. If we studied all night, go on.
We still wouldn't pass the test.
Correct. If we went to the beach,
Would you go swimming?
spot on. Thank you. Leave your cards on the front desk, go and sit down. I want you to finish that second conditional clause. So the first half is given to you, the yellow bit is given to you. If I were ruler of the world, go. Rob.
So can you make it up?
You can make it up, Rob. Somebody give me a hand. If I were ruler of the world, I would. Courtney.
I'd invent hover cars.
Brilliant. If I were ruler of the world, I would.
I would buy a Ford Escort.
We all have dreams, guys. So Supergroup 1, you get in that corner with this punch up. Supergroup 2.
The class have been creating scripts around a modern-day version of Romeo and Juliet, set in a gangland nightclub.
Hey, shippies!
Right, Buff? Cal's the dread leader. Oh, cool.
Gareth used this work to encourage some writing in the first person, using second conditional clauses.
So I turned around and said to myself, if I wasn't pretty, would he still be looking at me?
If I hadn't seen her that night, I'd be in the dread. I slided down the wall. I was gutted.
That's absolutely spot on, mate. Good work, mate. If the if clause comes first, what do we need? What do we always need between the two clauses? Mia.
Comma.
We always need a comma, and if the main clause comes first,
Don't know if they know.
you don't. Thank you guys for a really good lunch.
Following on from the lesson, Barbara and Gareth discuss 3 ways the work on subordinate clauses might be extended.
In that lesson you sort of did probably about a 10-minute sort of little introduction to the idea of the conditional clause, and I was quite interested to see whether one could think about ways of taking that forward and developing it.
Well, one of the things I've done with this in the past is get them to write. They're writing poetry essentially, but I call it song lyrics. I mean, there's a Coldplay song which is basically all what if, and they come up with the second half.
That sounds great. I mean, that sounds like a lovely activity where they'll remember, it'll be memorable, have been a fun activity to do, and it will really embed it in their thinking. That idea of the song or the rap is one which gets them to use what they've learnt about the grammar in their own writing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Another approach, a different approach, might be, if you're in this situation, I would advise you to do this, or I would advise you to do that. Writing to advise is a a very obvious place.
Yeah. What I've always done with the writing to advice thing is use problem pages, and they can use, then they use this second conditional clause thing in that way as well. And if it's things like, I think my boyfriend is cheating on me, you can get, you have to stop them doing it, because quarter of an hour later, when they've still giving
got
advice. Through, kill him, burn all his clothes, they eventually get down to it.
A third option might be to think about the way grammar is used in a text. You might find you could introduce some sort of bigger ideas around audience and purpose, and thinking about why it is that conditional clauses are used, or why it is that subordinate clauses in general are used. For instance, one example might be to use a picture book.
Yeah, it sounds excellent. One of the things we've just done recently is looking at how audience affects the way you write. It does get them doing their own thing. It is also enjoyable, and silly as it sounds, the starting point is so accessible that absolutely everyone can get in there.
Yeah, great. Okay, and also I think one of the things about it is it's an actual bit of language in use, in which the grammar is very, very interesting.
Yeah.
It's very interesting, isn't it, to see why it is that in a children's book you are not using complex sentences. You're using either compound or simple sentences.
We've got, guys, the opening here to a book. Rose's husband died a long time ago. Now she lived with her dog. His name was John Brown. What can we notice straight away about this text?
It was just quite simple.
Dan's spot on, okay? When we say that, what do we actually mean when we say it's very simple?
Just really short sentences.
There's very limited punctuation, there's not much at all.
Okay, so a very basic grammatical structure.
So it just says Rose's husband died a long time ago.
Yeah.
It doesn't explain onto it.
We've got basic information, okay? There's not much description. Let's look at this. Look at all these. Who is the audience for this book? Who is this book aimed at? Rihanna.
Maybe younger children?
Okay, so the audience, Rihanna says young children. Why?
It's very basic, and that's the kind of thing that a child would read, not like an adult wouldn't really get interested in that.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think we're looking here at a storybook for young children.
They latched on very, very quickly, didn't they, to the idea of what kind of text this was, and they were using the clues from the sentence structure to do that. And I thought the way that you were pulling out the messages from that was excellent. I thought that worked well.
It does show a progression from where they were a couple of weeks ago, which is good. And I think the good thing for me was the first thing somebody said was, this is a simple sentence, and if you're starting to identify that, and then talking about the audience, then that is getting them to where they need to be.
What I want you to do is I want you to all put your pens down, and you're all going to come and sit here in a little circle.
Story time.
Story time it will be.
Cute, eh?
John Brown loved Rose, and he looked after her in every way he could. In summer, he sat under the pear tree with her.
Aww.
John Brown waited in the kitchen for his breakfast, and nothing happened. He went to see what was wrong. I'm sick, said Rose. I'm staying in bed. All day, said John Brown. All day and forever, said Rose.
Getting them around, sitting around in a circle like that, worked. They loved that.
I think sometimes, because they all act like they're adults, sometimes treating them like they're not does work, and they really enjoy it as well.
Right, guys, can you get up, get back to your seats really quickly, please. Last time we looked at subordinate clauses. Okay, we use these clauses for a number of reasons: to add information, to give greater detail, or to tell us more about the characters. What I want you to do is, with these first three sentences, create a second subordinate clause to go with the first one. Okay?
Which one?
Right, guys, another couple of minutes, okay? Now she lived with her dog.
Although it could never make up for her husband.
So she wasn't lonely.
Fine, that's good.
Although she was happy by herself.
Very nice. If we think of the reasons to use these subordinate clauses, what have you added? Rob,
Because you've added a second part to the sentence, there's more to think about.
Okay.
So you could probably aim at a different audience.
Because we're adding bits on the end of it, does that make it for maybe a higher up, so like from 6 to 10 or something?
I think definitely doing this changes the audience, changes who it's aimed at, yes. I'm going to give you in pairs a page from the book, and I'm going to ask you to rewrite that page, aiming it, like Rihanna said, at your age group. Give you a full dog. She was cold.
I think that probably works better than
right, I will read out. I'll read out the part in the book. You guys read out what you're doing. Remember what I'm looking for. In winter he watched as she dozed by the fire. All year round he kept her company.
In the cold winters, John Brown watched caring Rose, his faithful owner, as she dozed by the old Victorian fireplace with its blinding glow. All year round he kept her company.
One night Rose looked out of the window and saw something move in the garden.
One cold night, Rose looked out of the window.
because she heard a loud noise occurring outside.
She saw something move in the garden. Consequently,
she went out into the cold night to investigate.
One of the tricky things about teaching grammar is how interrelated everything is. And teaching language in general actually is how interrelated everything is. So it was quite interesting when they came to try to use subordinating clauses in their own writing, how much that got merged into all sorts of other things around vocabulary, more complicated vocabulary and all sorts of other things like that.
What I want you to do is I want you to construct your own ending to that story. What I would like you to do is to keep the audience the same as the one you've just used, okay? Perfect. Natalie, how are we going?
That's a brilliant idea. The cat goes out and buys Rose some medicine and then they all live happily ever after.
Right. Are you ready? Could you please take us through your masterpiece?
After thinking, John Brown remembered something that he saw on TV. He sat there laughing at the thought of poor Rose passing away and him being able to steal all the pedigree, chicken and fish that he wanted. Although, when he thought about it, he felt sad and felt that he didn't deserve any of this luxury.
However, as he was thinking deeply, he heard a noise. His ears pricked up and he listened again. It was a midnight cat scratching at the window. Its pokey little head was nuzzling the icy glass.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Sarah. You've done really well today, guys. Okay. Before you go, do you want to know what really happens to John and the cat? Okay, I'll read it to you. Will the midnight cat make you better, he asked. Oh yes, said Rose, that's just what I want.
One of the most important things that came out was what you were saying about the benefits of starting with a sort of simple text rather than necessarily working with always with newspaper articles or, you know, big complicated texts.
Absolutely. I think that was really, really useful. And it's also something you can have a lot of fun with.
And also for me, the fact that it was looking at the grammar in a real text and thinking about audience and thinking about, you know, why the writer's writing in the way he is. I thought that was just great. Starting with something this simple as well, it really is not quite back to square one, but so basic. And then you can build the complex stuff. I think when we look at something complicated, they're going to have learned the lesson and say, well, I know I can do this and I know why I've done this.
John Brown thought. He thought all through lunch, and when supper time came, he was still thinking.
I think that is one that they will remember for a while, and next lesson, any money they'll want to know about the dog again.